Hello, BookTube. We have more mail. The mail never stops here. So even though we did a mountain of books yesterday, we have more books to do right now. More new books that came in the mail that I want to share with you. And if you hear eating sounds in the background, that would be Frida. Her food bowl is on the floor here in the room, and she is hungry because we have had extremely elevated levels of mice activity here in Hyde Cottage. I noticed it first thing this morning, that not only were the mice skittering around, they tend to do that in the morning, but that they were skittering around recklessly across the floor. They've learned over the last 3 years that they have to stick to the countertops. They were skittering around on the floor. They were skittering around clean in plain sight in the middle of the room. I'm wondering why this is, if there's something going on outside, some environmental factor that's causing them. They never act like this at all. And I have a firm and fast rule with my dogs. I have always had this rule, no matter what kind of dog it was. If you can catch it, you can kill it. And Frida, I mean, her breed was made for catching mice and rats. And she is preternaturally good at it. Just amazing. I remember the first time I saw that. I'd already been warned about it by Schnauzer people online. I was asking what am I getting myself into. They said, well, these are mousers. So if you don't want her to do that, you should make sure that, to watch out for it. And I was, one day, months after I got her, I was just playing with her. She was still a little milk puppy. I hadn't even taken her outside. She was just a tiny little nugget of a thing. I was playing with her on the floor, and the mice in this apartment had grown very complacent because my previous two dogs, my girls, for years, they had been very old and almost blind, and certainly not going to chase a mouse. So the mice had learned that they could come right up to me at night when I would be working on the couch. At night, the whole place would be quiet and dark, and my girls would be asleep on either side of me. And sometimes the mouse would come right up onto the couch, onto my blanket, and just sort of look at me. And I have nothing against them. I think mice are fine roommates. They generally do very little damage. They generally, despite a horrible reputation to the contrary, they generally don't transmit any kind of diseases. Yes, they leave their poop behind, but if we didn't have toilets, so would we. But nevertheless, in the middle of that play session, a mouse crossed the floor about, I don't even know, or all the way across the room, and Frida's reaction was instantaneous, and I have never seen a dog move so fast. Never. The mouse had no chance at all. I'd seen her move fast before, but not like that. It was clearly instinct. It wasn't anything to do that she was thinking or deciding to do. She killed the thing in a fraction of an instant and made short work of all the other mice anywhere on the floor in the apartment in the next year. And for a long time they've been gone, but today they were just rampant all over the place, in the living room and in the kitchen. So Frida earned her keep. She was very busy all morning just killing mice. That's all she was doing. She's having an absolute blast. So I moved her bowl in here, not only to reward my little conquering heroine, but also because I'm worried that the bowl is attracting the mice to leave her. Frida likes to leave her food out all day and pick at it, and that might be tempting them. So anyway, that'll be the noise in the background. But we've got a bunch of packages here. We'll just go through them because it never ends. We had 4 tubs of packages yesterday, and there are more today. And this first one is not a book. Unless I'm mistaken, this is a catalog, because it's too big and too flat to be anything else. It wouldn't be. Yeah, it's a catalog. Okay. Oh, very nice. Okay, it's a catalog from Zondervan, the religious and biblical publisher. They do absolutely great work. So here you get something. They do popular stuff, but also scholarly stuff. So the very first thing, the highlight that they're doing is the New Testament in Its World by Michael Bird and N.T. Wright. That a lot of you will know. A lot of you will know his name, which comes out now. That is out now in a 1,000-page hardcover. And then Mark Strauss, another well-known author. This is a March release called 4 Portraits, 1 Jesus. This is the second edition of his attempt to square the Gospels into some sort of coherent narrative, which cannot be done. But it's always fun to watch scholars do it. They've been doing it for 2,000 years. The New Testament in Antiquity, very nice. Very nice. And this is also going to have, I mean, in addition to all of these things that are all going to be interesting, always in the Zondervan catalog, there is also some scholarly thing that I just really want. They had a commentary on the Old Testament a couple of years ago that was just so good. It was just fantastic. This is probably going to have something similar to that, and an ornate study Bible, or an ornate series of exegesis. I'll have to go through this in fine detail. Their books can be expensive, and I have a feeling they don't have the unlimited budget that Oxford or Harvard does. So I like to be sparing in my requests, and therefore I like to go over the catalog with a fine-tooth comb. But that's great. Okay, so we have the spring Zondervan catalog. Great. And then this next package, the first one was a little odd because it was a catalog, and the next package is a little odd because it's hand addressed, which usually I would say comes from one of you, but this seems to have a pub sheet with it. So I'm thinking maybe not. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what we have here. What have we got here? Okay, well, it's from Coach House Books. It is poetry. Yes, it is a slim volume of poetry by Andrew Zawacki, and it's called Unsung. A nicely put together thing here. This is the author's fifth volume of poetry, in which he expands his inquiry into the possibilities and dangers of a global pastoral, exploring geographies alternately enhanced and flattened out by digital networks, international transit, the uneven and invisible movements of capital, and the unrelenting feedback loops of data surveillance, weather disaster, and war. But none of that sounds like it would work for poetry. That's intriguing already. None of that sounds like something a poet would write about. Okay, great. Well, this comes out. What now, huh? What now, huh? What on earth is going on here? Okay, all right. The pub sheet tells me that this thing came out in September of 2019. So that's a little odd right there. September of 2020, I could understand, and I'll have to check to see if maybe that's a typo. September of 2019, I don't quite know what I'm supposed to do with it, except for read it, of course. But anyway, Unsung. That description sounded really interesting, very unconventional. But anyway, let's move on. I think the rest of these are all just completely conventional. Let's see here. Okay, this next one is another paperback original, a June book, and a historical novel. So this is The Woman in the Green Dress by T. Cooper. And it takes place in 1853 in New South Wales. Della Atherton, bereft at the loss of her parents, is holed up in the place she loves best, the beautiful Hawkesbury in New South Wales. Happiest following the trade her father taught her, Della has no wish to return to Sydney. I wonder what the trade is. But the unexpected arrival of it must be millinery, right? It must be dressmaking. Well, let's see. But the unexpected arrival of Captain Stefan von Richter on a quest to retrieve what could be Australia's first opal precipitates Della's return to Sydney and her curio shop of wonders, where she discovers her enigmatic aunt, Cordelia, is selling more than curiosities to collectors. Strange things are afoot, and Della, a fly in the spider's web, is caught up in events with unimaginable consequences. There are no opals in Australia? I didn't know that. Got plenty of sharks. New South Wales has plenty of sharks. You'd be crazy to go swimming any distance from shore off New South Wales. But and then the story moves on to 1919 Sydney. So we're leaving Mogo Creek behind. When London tea shop waitress Fleur Richards inherits land and wealth in Australia from her husband Hugh, killed in the war, she wants nothing to do with it. After all, accepting it will mean Hugh is really dead. But Hugh's lawyer is insistent, and so she finds herself ensconced in the Berkeley Hotel in Sydney, the reluctant owner of a Hawkesbury property and an old curio shop now desolate and boarded up. Oh, there'll be something connecting the two. As the real story of her inheritance unfolds, Fleur finds herself in the company of a damaged and returned soldier Kip, holding a thread that takes her deep into the past, a thread that could unravel a mystery surrounding an opal and a woman in a green dress. And the author is an award-winning writer of historical fiction based in Australia. So those of you in Australia, do you know this author? I wonder if this is the first of her books that has ever been in America. Okay, well, this comes out in June, so I think it sounds fascinating. It's all about. It's historical fiction set in and covering eras in history of a place that I will never be, and that is fairly rare. that is very rare. I have never been to Australia, and I never will be. So, oh my. Okay, all right. Steel yourselves here. Our next subject is a touch on the gross side. But the whole point of this book is to convince you that initial reaction is not fair. This is by Patrick Svensson, and it is the Book of Eels. Our enduring fascination with the most mysterious creature in the natural world. When you hear that a debut author sells their book into an astonishing 33 territories, launching internationally as a bestseller, and goes on to win the August Prize for Nonfiction, Sweden's equivalent of the National Book Award, a book about eels is probably not the first thing that jumps to mind. Mysterious, rather unattractive, and widely misunderstood, Patrick Svensson transforms... Oh, there are danglers, and there are danglers. Oh, my. Okay, we have to assume, because we're good charitable people, we have to assume that Patrick Svensson is not mysterious, rather unattractive, and widely misunderstood. That description is referring to eels, not to its author. But when in English you use a dangling participle like that, it attaches to the next thing you write. If we could all get that clear, it would be really nice, especially if you writers of pub sheets could get that clear. If you use a descriptive phrase like that in English, it attaches to the next word in the sentence, the next thing that comes up. Proximation, proximate, only. You're not supposed to rely on jumps of intuition, or you're going to come up with silliness like this, calling your author mysterious, rather unattractive, and widely misunderstood. What you do here is you take the sentence is mysterious, rather unattractive, and widely misunderstood. Patrick Svensson transforms the eel not only into something mythical and fascinating, but a philosophical metaphor for the fleeting magic of life. And what you want to do there is write mysterious, rather unattractive, and widely misunderstood, eels are transformed in Patrick Svensson's book into something mythical, fascinating, and a philosophical metaphor for the fleeting magic of life. Now, see, that took 1 second to do. And then you don't have a dangler that is going to the wrong place. But anyway, so this comes out in early May. Half poignant memoir about Svensson's growing up eel fishing with his father, and half captivating nature writing and natural history of the European eel. The Book of Eels explores the incredible mystery of this animal and how it has captured our imaginations for hundreds of years. A few things I learned that amaze me in this book. I love it when publicists take that personal tone in the sheet. I just love that. All European eels are born, but a lot of them can't do it because they're loaded with titles and they haven't read the book. They're pushing it, but they haven't read it. All European eels are born in the Sargasso Sea and return there to mate and die. So even if you're up in the highlands of Ireland, and in some black, ice-cold stream that has eels in it, if you're out in the fens in England, the Sargasso Sea, they not only came from there, but they're headed back there. This was the last place you're thinking of. Though no one to this day has ever seen them mate or give birth. During their lives, they move from saltwater to freshwater and back to saltwater as they go through multiple metamorphoses, becoming distinctly different fish each time. In their final migration, the European eel develops reproductive organs as its stomach simultaneously wastes away to nothing, and their physical form reflecting the singular final purpose of reproducing in the Sargasso Sea. So they become a womb. They become their reproductive organs as they get closer because they know they're not going to live. Incredible. Okay, well, the tagline for this says that it is part H is for hawk and part soul of an octopus. I'm thinking this should probably go to Olive, since those are two of her favorite books. All right, there we go, the Book of Eels. All right, let's move on here. What else have we got? What else is what got here? Oh, historical fiction. Do we have a sheet? Do I have a sheet for you? No, I don't. This is a historical fiction by an author who does it really well. I'll just read you au naturel from the book. This is Beatrice Williams. A lot of you will know her. If you like smart, well-done historical fiction that isn't on the usual 3 periods in history, then you might want to go to your library. They'll certainly have something by Beatrice Williams. You might want to go to their library and see if you like her. If you do, you have a lot of this author to read. She's prolific, and I ordinarily decry that, but in this case, she's also really talented, so I love it. This is coming out in June, and this is Her Last Flight. The new novel from Beatrice Williams this summer will be Her Last Flight. And this is, let's see, in 1947, photographer and war correspondent Janie Everett arrives at a remote surfing village on the Hawaiian island of Kauai to research a planned biography of a forgotten aviation pioneer, Sam Mallory, who joined the Loyalist forces in the Spanish Civil War and never returned. Obsessed with Sam's fate, Janie has tracked down Irene Lindquist, the owner of a local island-hopping airline, whom she believes might actually be the legendary Irene Foster, Mallory's one-time student and flying partner. Foster's disappearance during a round-the-world flight in 1937 remains one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. At first, the flinty Mrs. Lindquist denies any connection to Foster, but Janie informs her that the wreck of Sam Mallory's airplane has recently been discovered in a Spanish desert, and piece by piece, the details of Foster's extraordinary life emerge, from the beginnings of her flying career in Southern California, to her complicated, passionate relationship with Mallory, to the collapse of her marriage, to her aggressive career manager, publishing scion George Morrow. Oh my. Oh my. I wonder how he'll be portrayed in here. I know quite a bit about George Morrow. Oh my. As Irene spins her tale to its searing conclusion, Janie's own turbulent past gathers power. The duel between the two women takes a heart-stopping turn. What really happened to Mallory all those years ago? Can we ever come to terms with the loss of those we love and the lives that we might have lived? Okay. All right. Well, that's fantastic. I would be on board anyway. That sounds fascinating, but they always do. This author, one of the things I like about her is the skill with which she picks her subjects. She has a nose for looking at some detail, some historical detail, and realizing there's a story there. That's fantastic. We need more historical. Historical novelists tend to do that. Not many as successfully as she does it, but it's nice. It's refreshing. It's a nice change from looking at the big banner marquee events in history and saying, we should write another novel about that. Instead, she looks for stories, even when they do touch on high-profile subjects, like The Golden Hour. Her book last year was absolutely terrific, about the Duke and Duchess of Windsor in the Bahamas and a murder. It was just fantastically good, and your library will have that one. But this is coming out in June, so make sure that your bookstore is going to pre-order it, or go to your library and make a pest of yourself. That's wonderful, fantastic. So let's see here. Okay, we have two more. And then we'll be done. With today's mail, this was on the gigantic pile that I have yet to deal with from yesterday. What have we got here? Okay, this is, I think we've seen this already. This is the new book from Neil Bascom. A lot of you will know that author. Let's see here. This is March. This is late March. This is Faster: How a Jewish Driver, an American Heiress, and a Legendary Car Beat Hitler's Best. A very stylish Art Deco cover there. Sometimes there comes along a sports story that one marvels has never been told in its full glory. 4 years ago, author Neil Bascom received a tip about a remarkable race car and the improbable team of upstarts who saw it come to creation during the golden age of motorsport. Such was its success that Hitler reportedly sent his henchmen to have the car found and destroyed when he invaded France. An incredible tale has now become an exhilarating book. In it, Bascom introduces us to René Dreyfus, a former top driver on the international race car circuit who had been all but banned from the Grand Prix by the mid-1930s because he was Jewish. We also meet Charles Wiffenbach, head of the down-on-its-luck automaker Delahide, who was desperately trying to save his company as the world teetered towards the brink, and Lucy Schell, the adventurous daughter of an American multimillionaire who yearned to reclaim the glory of her Monte Carlo rally driving days. Okay, all right. This author, let me see here. He wrote The Winter Fortress, Hunting Eichmann, The Perfect Mile, and other books, and he's fantastic. So, and here again, it's a perfect marriage. It's a fantastic, a proven author, someone who's Oh, look at that. The end papers are the plans. The end papers are the plans. Look at that. Oh my, there'll probably be 2 people who read this who can make sense out of them. This is another example of an author who picks subjects well and then puts in the work. So here you have them on opposite sides of history. One writing fiction, one writing nonfiction, but it's the same set of skills and it's the same high unlikelihood of whether or not it can be done well. So wonderful, wonderful. All right, and then we have this last one, and then we'll finish up for today. So what have we got here? Okay, this is May. This is from Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. This is by Andres Newman. Is this going to be yet another piece of translated literature? That would be incredible. I've been swamped with translated literature. Yes, it is. Translated from the Spanish by Nick Caster and Lorenza Garcia. This is Fracture by Andres Newman. That is apparently its finished cover. Let's say it's brown. Okay, it's brown. so no matter who you are, no matter how you were raised, one thing comes to mind when you see brown. And no matter who you are, no matter where you were raised, if you're of a certain age, when you see brown flecked with spots that look like blood, you're not going to want to buy this book. Let's give you a reason to change your mind. Let's see here. The powerful new novel from the critically acclaimed, prize-winning author Andres Newman. Why do I know that name? I know that name. I've read this author before in translation. This ambitious work of literature set against Japan's 2011 nuclear accident tells a cross-cultural story about how every society remembers and forgets its catastrophes. And I am not going to forget anything about that catastrophe because I crawled through the Carbon Ideologies by William Vollmann not once, but twice. So, and I'm going to do it a third time when those mammoth volumes come out in paperback. I'm going to read the whole thing again. An earthquake unnerves Tokyo on March 11, 2011, triggering the Fukushima nuclear disaster and a tectonic stirring of the collective past. Mr. Yoshi Watanabe, an aging executive at an electronics company and a survivor of the atomic bomb, feels as though he is a fugitive in his own memory. Very well put. As the seams of his country threaten to come undone yet again, he braces himself to make the biggest decision of his life. Meanwhile, 4 women narrate their own memories of Watanabe and to an enigmatic Argentinian reporter investigating his life. Their stories, told in different languages and describing different loves, map a socio-political tour of Tokyo, Paris, New York, Buenos Aires, and Madrid, proving that nothing ever happens in one place, that every human event reverberates to the end of the earth. Sounds ambitious. The author was born in 1977 in Buenos Aires. This was the year I bought this shirt. He was born in 1977 in Buenos Aires. He grew up in Spain. Selected as one of Granta's best young Spanish-language novelists and was elected to the Bogota 39 list. What is the book, though? Oh, Traveler of the Century. Traveler of the Century came out from FSG in 2012 and got reviewed everywhere in America. Everywhere. It was bigger than this. Traveler of the Century, that's the one I'm thinking of. That came out in 2012. And won the National Critics Prize from Spain. Okay. All right. This fantastic. This comes out in early May. A novel about Fukushima. Okay, so once again, we have been all over the map. So we have Fracture by Andres Newman, who wrote Traveler of the Century. We have Her Last Flight by Beatrice Williams, where a woman tracks down someone who might be the widow of a legendary pioneering pilot, and uncovers a more complicated story. Then Faster by Neil Bascom, an unlikely trio, masterminding a car the best that Nazi Germany has to offer. The Book of Eels, going to try and make you fall in love with those slimy, ever so tasty things. Then The Woman in the Green Dress, historical fiction set in Australia. Unsung, a collection of poetry from 2019, and the spring catalog from Zondervan, which is going to have a great deal of treasure in it. I know I gave it short shrift, but I'm going to love it. So there you go. That is your mail for today, and all these go on the pile that I still haven't touched in the other room. I've got like 100 books that I need to process. I need to process them. I need to go through each one of them. I need to start sifting. Certainly need to sort them by publication month and put them on the appropriate shelves, but I also need to get a sense of them, of what they are, and maybe dip into some of them, maybe give one or two of them a chance to take me over and make me read it. We're sitting right there. I haven't done all that. That's the thing. That's the one thing about vacations. They're so good for the soul. They're so good for everything. They make you appreciate even the stuff that you leave behind. But they do put you behind in just quotidian work. I was very busy at work when I was up at the old farmhouse in Vermont. I can't not be. I'm a working writer. I'm a freelance writer, so I don't have an office to go to. So I'm never at work, but I'm also never off work. It's lucky that I love what I do. And it's also lucky that my hosts understand that. So I spent a lot of time. In fact, I think there were some mocking pictures on Instagram to demonstrate this. I spend most of my time when I'm not talking to this camera or playing with the bean, just sitting and writing. Or reading. I read all night long, but during the day I sit and write. That's all I do. It's kind of boring. I love it. I love it so much. And that is the one thing I fell behind on. As much as I did, I fell behind on reading and I fell behind on writing because there was human interaction to do. There was vast amounts of wine to drink. So anyway, that is our mail. That is our mail for today. If there's more mail, I'm not going to open it. I'm just going to let it sit until tomorrow, and we'll deal with it then. So I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.